Hey guys, today we are going to be talking about animal structure and function. Be sure you've got that note-taking sheet with you, and let's get started. There are 5 different groups of animals: fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. We as humans are mammals. We'll get to that category last. We will begin with fish. There are 3 different areas we're going to talk about when we talk about the structure and then the function of those parts of the animals as far as its it's remaining a species. You have growth, how do they grow? We have reproduction, meaning how do they create more members of their species? And we have survival, meaning what elements of them, what parts of those animals are used for their survival. So we will start with growth because that's the first column on our note sheet. Fish growth is what we're going to be talking about here. Now if you look at the 2 pictures there, those are showing you cute little baby fish. The one in the top is just barely hatching. The one in the bottom is all the way out. So fish are hatched from eggs. And then, as you can see from the pictures, they look like fish. So there's no metamorphosis they have to go through. They just hatch from that egg, and then as a baby fish, they will grow and develop into an adult version of themselves. As far as reproduction, you can see in the picture there that, again, they are eggs. Being fish and underwater, they are eggs that are laid underwater. You'll notice that there are lots of those. Fish actually lay their eggs thousands at a time. There's a couple of different reasons for this. Number one, they do this because the eggs will get eaten by predators of some sort. Number two, they'll do it because the baby fish will get eaten by predators of some sort. So if they are going to survive as a species, if any of those babies are going to become adults, they have to lay eggs in such a mass quantity so that some of those babies will eventually become adult fish and be able to reproduce again. And then the final is survival. Fish are what we call cold-blooded. The scientific word for this is exothermic. Exo being outside, thermic meaning temperature. The temperature of cold-blooded creatures is monitored and kept in check by the outside environment. They don't have a way to control their own temperature, so they rely on the environment to control it for them. Fish also have gills rather than lungs. If they're going to be able to breathe underwater, lungs are created to get oxygen from the air. Fish have gills because the gills are able to pull oxygen out of the water. So they're still able to breathe even though they can't get to the air. And then one of the final things that all fish have is scales. In part, the scales are there to help protect their skin. But the scales are also there because it helps create this sleekness to them. So as they're swimming through the water, they're a lot quicker. This allows them to avoid predators and dart in various ways. So if we just kind of review all of that, fish growth, they're hatched from eggs. They develop from a baby to an adult. As far as reproduction goes, those eggs are laid underwater because that's where fish live. And then they lay them thousands at a time because a lot will be eaten. Fish are cold-blooded, meaning they get their temperature from the environment. They have gills for breathing underwater, and they have scales for protection and sleekness. Our next animal will be the amphibian. Amphibians are a type of animal that are known for being able to live above water and on land. We'll get to that in just a minute, but if we just talk about amphibian growth, again, amphibians are hatched from eggs. As they hatch, they become what is called a tadpole. Now you'll see the tadpole in the top right picture there. The tadpole doesn't look anything like the bottom right picture. So unlike fish, When amphibians are hatched, they don't look anything like the adult version of themselves. They do go through a metamorphosis or a change. You can see that change starting to happen in the middle picture as they start to grow legs, and then their tail will begin to shrink until they become whatever form of amphibian they are. The bottom right corner is pictured as a frog, but it could be a salamander or many various different kinds of amphibians. When they're born as tadpoles, they have gills like fish do as well. And as they're changing, as they're metamorphosizing, those gills actually cover up with skin so that their lungs can develop and they can move on to land. Now again, they lay eggs underwater. And again, because they're so small, they get eaten a lot. So they, like fish, lay them thousands at a time so that their species can survive, so that they can continue to reproduce. And then as far as amphibians for survival, they are again cold-blooded, which means they rely on the outside environment to control their temperature. Adult amphibians, and this is what I was getting at earlier, can survive on both land and in water. This is one of their many survival techniques. So if they're trying to avoid a land predator, they can move into water. If they're trying to avoid a water predator, they can move up onto land. They are able to do this because they do have lungs, so they can breathe on land like any other, like we as humans. But when they move underwater, they no longer have the gills to pull it from the water. They are actually able to absorb the oxygen from their skin. So they can breathe on land from the air, and they can breathe underwater by absorbing the oxygen from the water through their skin. So to just kind of sum that all up, amphibians hatch as a tadpole, and then they will metamorphosize and grow into what they live as on land. The skin covers their gills so that they can develop those lungs. They will lay eggs underwater thousands at a time because some of those eggs will be eaten. Again, they are cold-blooded. Animals can survive on both land and on water, and they can absorb oxygen from the water through their skin, so they are still able to breathe underwater. Reptiles. Reptiles have a very similar look to amphibians. However, where amphibians are generally going to have a moist skin, reptiles are going to be dry. Reptiles are hatched from eggs. If you look in the top right there, it doesn't look like it's hatching quite like a bird's egg does, where it breaks through the shell, because a lizard's egg is a little more leathery and less just breakable. They will hatch as a baby reptile that grows into a bigger version of itself. So there's no metamorphosis for a reptile. They just hatch how they're going to look and grow into their adult form. They do lay eggs. As we discussed earlier, those eggs are laid on land. Because there is no metamorphosis when they hatch, they're not able to breathe underwater. So they're just laid and hatched on land. As far as reptile survival goes, they are cold-blooded. Again, means they get their temperature from the environment. Most of them have sharp teeth for protection and because they are carnivorous, meaning they eat meat. Some of them are venomous, others are poisonous. Now, when we had the aquarium visit, they actually explained this difference for us. Venomous means that you will get their poison by being injected into you. So this would be like snakes that have to bite you to put that venom into you. And then poisonous means they themselves are, like if you were to eat them, you would be poisoned by that. You have to ingest poison where venom gets injected into you. So reptiles hatched from an egg grow from a baby into an adult reptile. They lay eggs on land. They are cold-blooded. Most of them have sharp teeth for eating and for defending themselves. Some are venomous, some are poisonous. Our next type of animal we're going to talk about is birds. Now, much like all of the animals before this, birds lay eggs. So they lay eggs that will then hatch into a baby bird that develops into an adult bird. Now these don't look exactly like they will when they get older, because if you look, you can tell that the little eagle chick is small and fluffy, but that's just because its feathers develop into the adult feathers. But there is no metamorphosis. When this hatches, it looks like a bird, and it grows into a larger adult version of itself. All three of these pictures here are actually bald eagle pictures. This one in the top right is just barely hatching. This one is a newly hatched but all the way outside its shell. And both of these will grow and develop into this magnificent creature here in the corner. As far as birds for reproduction, again, they will lay their eggs on land, but in a nest. And that nest is usually up in a tree. So when we say on land, we're just meaning not underwater, because it's usually above the land up in the trees. Another fun aspect to birds is that they will use their plumage, or their feathers and such, as a way to attract a mate for reproduction. So you can notice, this guy here has his chest all puffed out. He said, "Hey, look at me. I am a suitable mate." Another fun fact that I didn't learn until I was an adult. In the bottom right corner there, we have pictured two of the peafowl species. Now, I always thought they were all called peacocks. But much like with chickens, you have hens, which are the girl chickens, and roosters, which are the boy chickens. Peacock actually refers to only the male of the species. So the peacock male is there in the back showing his full plumage, sticks his feathers out to say, "Hey mate, look at me." And then the peahens pictured down there are actually the more brown and subdued. Humans are one of the few varieties of animals where it's not just the male that has to do all of the hard work. In fact, for whatever reason, society has deemed that it's the woman that should be all beautified or whatever, which, I don't entirely agree with. In fact, I had a student point out in class yesterday that it kind of is both, because when men will get all dossied up to go out on dates as well. But in the animal kingdom, it really is just the man, or just the male of the species, that it has to do all of the work to try and attract the female. So just kind of a fun fact there that, in the animal kingdom outside of the human world, it's the men that have to do all of the hard work and have to prove themselves to the women before they can become what they are. And then the final aspect there is the survival. Birds are warm-blooded now, which means they have to monitor and control their temperature from the inside. They're what we call endothermic, endo being in, thermic being temperature. They have to try and regulate their temperature. Now, there's only so much they can do with this regulation on their own, which is why birds will actually migrate south for the winter. They're actually migrating down closer to the equator where it doesn't really get colder. This does mean in the southern hemisphere the birds migrate north for the winter, because again they're just moving to that equatorial point where it's warmer. And then the other aspect they have are those wings that they will use for flight. So if we just kind of review that, birds are hatched as an egg on land, usually up in a tree in their nest. They will grow from a baby bird into an adult bird. They will lay eggs in their nest. They will use their songs and plumage to attract a mate. They are warm-blooded. They can fly, and they will migrate for seasonal changes. The final area of animals is mammals, and this is actually what we as humans are. Let's talk about what makes a mammal a mammal. First off, mammals do not lay eggs. Mammals will have a live birth that is born as a baby of that animal, and grows into a bigger version of itself. A couple of pictures here that kind of show you both varieties of that. You've got the small and then the larger, the babies and then the mamas. So they will look like whatever kind of mammal they are. They will look like an ape. They will look like a cat. They will look like a human. And then they will grow into an adult version of that. Another part of animal growth is that the mom of the mammal species will produce milk, which the babies will then feed off of. So you can see in the bottom picture of the cat there, those kittens are actually feeding off of their mama's milk. So again, as far as reproduction goes, mammals do not lay eggs. There is, because there always is, one exception that I know of to that, and that is the duck-billed platypus, which is a mammal, but it lays eggs. But most of your mammals, in fact, one of the things that we generally use to classify them as a mammal is that they give live birth. So there's not an egg that's hatched and then they develop in the egg to the animal. They are grown inside the mom, and when they come out of the mom, they are a live animal. They will also, kind of like the birds, use parts of them or communication to help attract a mate. There are calls and stuff, mating calls, which they will use, whether it's a wolf's howl or a lion's roar. But then also, again, the male of these species are the ones that have to do all of the hard work as far as attracting and proving themselves to the female. If you think about a lion, it's the male lion that has the big mane for attraction. When you think about like deer and moose and elk, it's the male that has the antlers to try and prove itself and attract itself or get the female attracted to it. So they will communicate through how they look and through their vocals to try and attract that mate. As far as survival goes, mammals are again warm-blooded. They regulate their own temperature. Now, mammals do have hair to help with this. If you have a dog or a cat or anything like that, you'll notice that their coat gets a lot thicker during the winter when it gets colder. And that's to help protect against the elements. So we do have hair to help us control that. Now you'll notice that humans, we've kind of evolved to not have as much, and that's just because we've figured out how to not need it as much. We've built houses, we learned to make fire, so we don't need it. We've evolved to not need that hair as much, but we do still have it. And then again, that communication is for many reasons. So a wolf might howl to try and attract a mate, but a wolf might also howl to warn its pack of a problem, or of a predator, or of some incoming danger. Elephants are, the same way. They will trumpet to warn of a danger, or, all of these animals, all of these mammals will have some kind of call, whether the roar or a meow or a shriek of a monkey, like a howler monkey. And those might be used to attract a mate, but they could also be used to warn their families that there is some kind of incoming danger. So if you look, they are born as a live baby that grows into an adult. The mothers feed milk to the babies, and that helps with their growth and development. As far as reproduction, we are live birth, and we will communicate to attract a mate. And then mammals are warm-blooded. They have hair to help control that temperature, and then they will communicate for warnings too. So that is the 5 different varieties of animals. Make sure you've got these notes filled in. Make sure you submit those notes so that I can see them. I will link you a copy of the notes if you just want to look at the sheet as a whole rather than in these little blips, or you can go back through the video and check them out again. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about animals. I'm actually super excited for this unit. I've always been a big animal person, and I'm excited to teach about it.